Has this ever happened to you? You go to an event, you meet someone, they tell you their name, and then 5 seconds later, you've forgotten who they are. Or maybe you go to an event and you meet several people, several possible prospects, and you want to remember their name, but you're too embarrassed to admit that before the event is even over, you've forgotten who they are. Wouldn't it be great if you could simply reach into your memory and retrieve the names of every single person that you met at an event, no matter how many people? You demonstrate care and commitment to these new prospects. You'd show yourself to be a competent business and sales professional, and they would remember you because you remembered them. Wouldn't it be great if you could remember everybody that you met at an event, no matter how many people? I know that you can do it because I can do it, and I do not have any special memory gift. I've just learned the tips and techniques so that I can remember more than 40 people when I go to an event. And you can too, if you believe that you can learn how to do it. But a lot of times we have our own agendas when we go to an event. Here's the sad but true story of Sue. She was a young college graduate applying for her first teaching job. She came to the interview and was greeted by 5 men, but she wasn't paying attention to their names because she was nervous about what she was going to say. About 20 minutes into the interview, she was asked, "Sue, what do you know about John Brown?" She thought about her educational training, couldn't come up with anything, and said, "I don't know who that is. I've never come across that name." "Yes, you did, Sue. He was the 3rd man you were introduced to." Sue was devastated. She was shocked. Inside herself, mind, she was thinking, "Oh, these people must believe that I would be a terrible teacher because I'm not paying attention." And she didn't get the job. But she remembered the lesson all her life. And the lesson is that names are important. When people tell you their name, you should focus on remembering them if you can. It's important in some industries, and it's required in some others. But, names are hard. And we don't want to annoy somebody by calling them by the wrong name, so we'll just say, "Hey, you." Now, I know what it's like to be called by the wrong name because I grew up with an identical twin brother. So I was called the wrong name for the first 20 years of my life. That's why my McDonald's name tag said Bob or Bill. Because that's what people called me anyway, right? But annoyance is a bad way to start off a business relationship, and it's better if you can avoid it. And I'm going to help you with that by giving you 3 tips and 3 techniques. Now, these are all presented in my book, Remember the Room, How to Remember Everyone You Meet at an Event. What I'll be presenting here today will just be a quick inspirational overview. First, 2 quick tips. And the first one is so Zen-like in its simplicity, you're going to be amazed at how I came up with it. It is, before you go to an event, remember to remember. This is talking about presence of mind. It's like when you go shopping at the Mall of America and you park your car in the garage not thinking where you put it, and you can't find it after you're done shopping. So just think beforehand, before you go to an event, just say, "I'm going to try to remember names," and that will help. The second tip is, as soon as someone tells you their name, no matter how simple it is, you repeat it back to them, because that will create a memory in your mind of you saying their name. But names are hard because we're trying to fill in a formula with some missing variables. The formula is name equals face. A word equals an image. That does not equate. So I'm going to help you to fill in the missing blanks using the 3-step formula: look, listen, and link. You look at the person, you listen to their name, and then you mentally link them together. Well, that sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Especially the first part, looking. We can do that, right? Well, in this culture, we don't really look at people. At church, we have a greeting time, and one Sunday I stood up and I shook hands with a man. I said, "I'm Bob Miller, what's your name?" And he said, "I'm Sam." So I looked at him because I wanted to remember him next time I saw him at church. After church, sweet Becky and I went to Menards, and so did Sam. there he was walking down the aisle right towards us. So I said, "Hi, Sam." And you know what he did? You know how people wave when they don't really know who you are? They keep going? That's what I got from him, because he hadn't really looked at me. So when you look at somebody for the first time, I want you to look for a striking feature that is very noticeable about them that you'll probably notice the next time you see them. You're going to look at their eyes, their ears, their nose, the shape of their head. Look at their skin tone. Look for moles or scars or tattoos. Look at the height and shape of their body. Just choose something that really stands out. So for example, if you look at me, you would notice that I am follically challenged. So you can use my bald head as your memory cue. No pun intended. Second, listen. You listen to their name. Now, names are hard to remember because they are nonsense words. They have no definition. What is a Michael or a Sally or a Lisa? They don't mean anything. And so we have to make the names more meaningful by converting them into an image that we can imagine. So when someone says his name is Michael, you don't just think of, you imagine a microphone. If someone says their name is Sally, then you imagine in your mind a salad. If someone says Lisa, for example, you could imagine a dog leash. It doesn't have to rhyme. I met a man whose name was Elvis, so I just thought of a guitar because I knew that that would help me to remember his name. So now we've done something. We've made the name more memorable by choosing a name image. We've made the face more memorable by choosing one feature. And now step 3, we're just going to link them together. We're going to link them together in a crazy, funny image if we can. Why crazy? Because crazy and unusual is memorable. Boring and ordinary is not memorable. That's why it's hard to remember some people. So you link them together into a crazy image. For example, you look at me, you see my bald head, you hear my name Bob, and you can convert it to the name bobber, as in fishing bobber. So you could imagine my bald head as a giant fishing bobber. And you have to really see it in your mind's eye, and that will make a difference. It really will. Those are the 3 steps, but there's one more tip, and this is very important, and that is review. Before you leave the event, you look at every person that you met and try to recall their name. Or if you get back from the event and you have a stack of business cards, you look at each name and try to remember what the person looked like. Now, if you implement any one of these tips or techniques, that will help you to remember more names. But if you implement them all, you'll become a memory master and be known as the person who remembers. So those are the 3 tips and the 3 techniques. And you may wonder, does this actually work? Well, you'll find out when you try to put it into practice. I know it works, but you have to test it for yourself. So it'll be great when you meet somebody in an event and then you see them a week later and you see this significant feature that reminds you of their name image, which reminds you of their name, and then it'll be like, ding, a light bulb will go off in your head. And you'll say, hey, I remember you, and you'll name them and they'll feel great, and you'll feel great because you remembered their name, and then you'll know that this really does work. So we know that memory is important, and we feel intuitively that it's good for business connections, but why? Is there something deeper? I think so. My first year out of high school, when I was 19, I was still living with my parents. And one Sunday after church, I went upstairs to my bedroom and I put on a disguise. A really good disguise. Then I climbed out the window, down the tree, and I knocked on the back door of the house, acting like a person whose car had broken down and I needed to use the telephone. And I changed my voice so my parents wouldn't recognize me. Did they know who I was? No. They talked to me for 10 minutes. They did not know who I was. And inside, I'm thinking, wow, this is the greatest gag ever. This would be so fun when I reveal myself. But then after a while, I started to feel really weird. I felt something I'd never felt before. The 2 most important people in my life were looking at me as a stranger. I was unknown, unloved, and unwanted. And I didn't like that feeling. That made me feel bad. Fortunately, they were good sports and we all had a good laugh afterwards, but I still remember that feeling. Now that's how some strangers may feel when they come to an event. They come to a networking event, they feel like a stranger among a sea of strangers. And so if you greet them, you learn their name and you call them by name, it's like you're throwing out a life preserver to a drowning person. They will feel great because you've made a connection for them. So remembering names is not just great because you're making a personal and business connection, but it's because you're making a human connection. You're not just serving yourself by getting a new prospect, but you're serving the other person by connecting with them. So use your memory powers to recall names, to make a human connection, and to make strong business and personal relationships.